Pebble, rain pattered against glass. Burnt beans overtook the scent of fresh bread. Voices overlapped as stories were shared and gossip was spilled. The game played on the TV. We were winning. The buzz in the air was almost intoxicating. Even the rain couldn't dull it. Gray stared at the brown liquid. Steam rose, collecting into beads of sweat as his face hovered over the cream-colored mug. Blonde curls curtained flushed skin and bleeding lips as his teeth pulled at the delicate skin. He was in his own air. The buzz flowed around him. His ears were stuffed with the nectar of the past. It seeped out, dripped down his arm, burned through his skin, revealing scars that were hidden with years of neglect. Nails cracked as he dug into the wooden table. His mind swirled. The nectar was thick. It was creeping through the crevices of his head, consuming thoughts he pushed down and forcing him to face it. Metal filled his mouth as Gray bit down harder on his lips. Pain filled his face, and the sob got stuck in his throat. Taking a deep breath, he picked up the mug and took a sip of the bitter liquid. It stung at his bruised lips, but the taste was welcome. A deep breath led to long sigh, releasing tension as he slumped over the table. Pebble? He clenched his eyes closed as his mind flooded. The bricks of the dam slammed and slammed against the limit of his conscious as the memories flooded over him. Gray scrambled across the sticky ground. He gripped at the blood-soaked hoodie, pulling the small body into his arms. His fingers left trails as he rubbed at the bruised skin, hoping his touch would wake him up. Pebble, come on. What he thought was a yell was nothing more than a cracked whisper. Shaking hands gripped at curls that were just like his, just a bit brighter in color. He just kept repeating himself, holding the one good thing in his world, rocking him back and forth like he had to do to help him fall asleep just a couple years ago. A few feet away, smoke rose from the fifth cigarette lit today. It found its home between cracked lips. Lips that never once said anything that portrayed an ounce of care. Those lips belonged to a woman of dirty beauty. Beautiful blonde curls that have been passed along for generations framed a pretty pale face that was stressed by a chosen sickness. She stared at the scene, the bodies that were her offspring, at least by the doctor's words. But just 'cause the doctor said it doesn't mean she cares for it. The law forces her hand, forces her to obey her parental expectations, but it can't make her look at them with anything but an icy indifference. That indifference made her not care when they cried, when they needed to be held, when they needed someone to praise them, when they won, and support them when they fell. That is why, when her youngest was beaten with vase after vase, until the glass shards impaled him because he whined too much. She didn't move a muscle. One less expense. Tears were dripping into his coffee, little splatters staining his clenched hands. He took one and bit on it, holding inside his screams as what happened just a few hours ago replayed. Stepping inside the decade-old home, the wood creaking with every step, the excitement he felt with Deku swinging in his pocket, imagining the look on Pebble's face as he held his favorite character in his hands. Then the way his soul dropped into the pit of his stomach. How his vision blurred until the only thing he could see was his little brother laying on the smoke-infested rug, his blood making it an even darker shade of black. The glass fractures, creating a mosaic of different colors that flickered in the light of the dusty swing lamp. Knots formed at the bottom of Gray's stomach. It burned. It hurt. The more he pushed it away, the more it forced itself forward. Their mother sitting there, watching, dusting the ashes off her pants. Their father's snores, traveling from down the hall. He bit into his skin until it split. Luckily, his shirt was black. No one could see the blood that was making it stick to his chest. Just the dirt that's layered on top of it. He couldn't leave his brother laying there. Someone had to bury him. Someone tapped him on the shoulder. Gray turned his head, blood trailing down his chin. "Are you okay, honey?" It was a middle-aged lady. Her hair was thrown into a tight ponytail that made her sharp features pop out even more. He licked his sore lips. Looking down, he had bit into the white meat of his hand. Blood trickled down his skin and dripped onto the table. Puffy eyes, blood-tinted skin and lips, dirt-stained clothes. Gray knew he looked a mess, swallowing his answer. His voice probably wasn't going to work anyway. He grabbed his coffee mug and walked right past her. Curious eyes probed at him as he walked towards the glass doors. Someone behind him was asking him to wait. But he didn't listen, or he couldn't hear. Either way, he walked straight into storm, the rain soaking his body in just a few minutes. Puddles splashed, cars honked, wet grass coated abused shoes. Gray let his feet lead the way. They brought him to the park. It was empty, of course. He climbed onto the playground, crawling his way into the little tunnel, the one place that was still dry. Somehow, he was still holding on to the mug. He took a sip. It tasted like brown water in the tube, surrounded by the rain cascading down. He let himself cascade. Sobs spilled out until his whole body shook. His hands not able to find the right place to stay. He kept trying to stick them in his pockets. But then he remembered Deku wasn't there. It was tight in Pebble's hand. He gripped his hair, his scalp protesting. His mother's nonchalant figure, his father's peaceful rest, Pebble's warm body lying there, still. It lit something in him. Everything he was holding inside, all that he kept hidden, to keep a smile on his little brother's face, all he dealt with to protect him, everything he never gained that he gave. His sobs trailed off into a coughing spill. His mind broke. The pain spilled over, the cuts, the bruises, the memories. The mug cracked in his tightening grip, his shaking hands from the cold, or his anger he didn't know. With a crack, the mug spilled into his lap, and a deafening scream spilled from his lips. The force bruising his already sore throat. It filled the tube. The storm swallowed it, taking his pain into its grasp as his vision blurred with red. Monochromatic. This story includes depictions of mental health and death. There is nothing graphic, but these topics are touched on. I had never been quite fond of Eve. As her psychiatric nurse, the buoy who kept her from drowning in an ocean of madness, I should have made an effort to respect my patient. I should have, and yet I couldn't. It was unbearable to deal with a soul so far gone, someone so dreadfully insane. Nonetheless, Evelyn Barrett was still mine to care for, my own burden. It was odd to dwell on the fact that someone so young, barely even 18 to be exact, could mentally fall down such a slippery slope. Eve was admitted to the sanitarium around 2 months ago, following her breakdown at school. According to her classmates, Eve had never been social. She tended to keep to herself when given the choice. And while this was not abnormal behavior for a teenage girl, it had always been different with Eve. Well, it had grown to become different. Students began reporting incidents involving Eve. They would hear her muttering to herself in class, her words unintelligible, but her whispers crazed. They would hear her sobbing in bathroom stalls. Her teachers noticed her grades slipping. Eve would write ominous messages on her papers, and she would draw horrific drawings in her notebook. Drawings of characters plucked straight from horror movies, monsters. Though her behavior was abnormal, Eve caused no problems. She remained silent, which was nothing out of the ordinary. She basked in the endless insanity of her paranoid, twisted mind. But at that time, no one was aware of how truly twisted it was. After months of containment, Eve suddenly exploded. She jumped up in the middle of class and shrieked, screaming bloody murder. Accounts of the story from her classmates explained that Eve screamed, "Leave me alone," dozens of times. According to the witnesses, Eve was not talking to a specific person, not one that anyone could see anyway. Her teachers restrained her and subdued her screams. Her behavior was, according to her classmates, purely and utterly horrifying, insane. And so, I was stuck with Evelyn Barrett. I tried to build connections with my patients, and usually, I was successful. Over my years as a nurse, I liked to think that my psychological support helped my patients heal. It did. There was no doubt about it. I did my job well until Eve came along. For some odd reason, I could not break through with Eve, break into her subconscious and heal her fragile mind. Whenever I tried to talk to her, she would do one of two things. Either she would completely block me out, or she would scream nonsense at me. In any case, neither method was beneficial in the slightest. The past 2 months had consisted of pointless therapy sessions and no progress whatsoever. I couldn't help but feel sorry for the poor girl. As I walked into my tidy office, I pushed out a sigh and slumped into my armchair. Eve was scheduled to meet with me at any second, and to be quite honest, I was dreading our session. Up until now, my day had been calm. My serenity was about to be interrupted simply by being in the presence of the crazed child. 3 knocks on the door was all it took. My spine straightened, and I felt the muscles in my neck tighten. My automatic physical response whenever Eve was near. The creaking of the door disturbed my therapeutic silence, and as I watched a caretaker escort Eve through the doorway, a queasy feeling began to form in my gut. Eve seemed on edge today, more on edge than normal. Her long cascade of honey blonde hair was ruffled, as though she couldn't be bothered to run a comb through it. Her face was a sickly shade of white. The shadows casted upon her face complemented the lack of life within her frozen, gray eyes. Eyes that hardly looked like eyes at all. She looked dreadful. The caretaker made sure that Eve settled comfortably on the couch before taking her leave. Nevertheless, Eve looked nothing but uncomfortable. She brought her knees to her chest and hugged them tightly, her body resembling something of a ball. Her hands shook while her feet tapped on the cushion over and over again. It was easy to assume that nerves had Eve in a chokehold. "How are you doing today, Eve?" I asked the girl, my voice visibly annoyed. I didn't care enough to put on a facade for her. Eve wasn't fond of me, as far as I could tell. It was obvious by the way her eyes ever so slightly cut into my face, as though they were 2 honed knives. Regardless, the feeling was mutual, and so treating one another this way had become routine. Usually when I asked her a question, Eve ignored it completely. I assumed she would simply ignore me by the way her gaze dug into my skin, and so I wasted no time before pulling out my notebook. Lazily, I jotted down a note. "Silence," I wrote. Nothing out of the ordinary, until I heard a raspy breath emerge from her mouth. "He's going to kill me soon," Eve muttered, her voice barely a whisper. I could hardly comprehend her words. Her empty eyes widened as her fingernails dug into her pants. The girl rocked back and forth in a crazed manner. almost as though she truly feared for her life. I, for one, believed that Eve was bananas. But as her nurse, I could not disregard such an alarming phrase. Who? Who's going to kill you? I asked, as calmly as possible. Though I knew that Eve was completely mad, I knew that she was. Her words still managed to send a chill through my bones. Eve disregarded my words for a moment, her mind unable to flee from whatever eternal nightmare it was trapped in. Her gaze remained on the ground and focused on anything but me. Seconds ticked by. Minutes. Finally, Eve's eyes snapped to mine, somehow more frantic than before. He's taking over my life, the world around me, everything. She snapped loudly, her sharp words making me flinch. Her body recoiled after her outburst, and she scrunched back into her ball with a shaken expression on her face. He's going to kill me soon, she repeated. I just know it. With a sigh, I set my notebook aside and leaned forward. This wasn't the first time that Eve had acted up during a session, but this was the first time that she seemed so sure. So sure about the fact that something was bothering her. I said, "You are safe here, Eve. Nothing is going to kill you. This is all in your mind, okay? You're okay." "No, please, Debbie. I am not insane. This is real," Eve persisted. Hearing her say my name was odd. She had never addressed me before, and until now, I did not know that she even knew my name. He's out to get me. The Shadow Man. He's the Shadow Man? I repeated incredulously. Despite Eve's urgency, I did not believe her words. Her crazed, perplexing words. She had never once opened up to me like this, and so I had no reason to believe that she was telling the truth now. Instead of dismissing her comment, I wanted to dig further. It was my job, after all. "Who is he?" Eve shuddered, as though a gust of icy wind had blown through the room. "I don't know." She paused abruptly and locked eyes with me. "But he takes things from me. He steals them." Despite my confusion, I played into her claim. "What does he take from you?" Eve blinked multiple times. "Color. Color? The color that I see. The color that she sees." "What does that mean, Eve?" I asked, and anxiety grasped my brain. Her answer, while strange, was also oddly specific. And something about that was off-putting. Color blindness. Was that what Eve was hinting at? Were colors fading from her vision? I took my assumption and rolled with it. "Does your family have a history of color blindness?" That sounded about right. Perhaps Eve was losing her sense of color, and she was freaking out about it. That wouldn't be anything out of the ordinary, but it was obviously nothing to go crazy about. No, it's not color blindness. He takes the color from me." She snapped again, her expression flushing with maroon fury. You're wrong. I am not crazy. You think I am, but I'm not. I'm not. Suddenly, Eve was on her feet, marching across the room to my desk. I sat up out of habit and hesitated. Eve seemed angry. Was she going to attack me? Grab for a weapon? I decided to take no chances, and I, too, rose to my feet. I turned to face Eve, only to find that she was inspecting various objects on my desk. Colored pens, Post-its, my computer. It's all black and white. Everything. She picked up a lime green Post-it and shook it in her hand. I can't tell what color this is. He stole it from me. It's gone. It's all gone. He's gonna kill me once everything is gone. Eve, calm down. No, I can't. Eve paused abruptly when her eyes fell upon a particular object on my desk. Her mouth gaped open as she snatched the object, inspecting it in awe. I almost reached for her arm and demanded for her to put the object down, but I restrained myself. Eve held the card that my daughter had made for me years ago. On the front of the card was a drawing of a rainbow, colored messily with crayon. My daughter had handcrafted the card when I fell terribly ill, and I believe that the card itself had cured me. I had kept it lying on my desk all these years, and the messy rainbow had been my constant reminder that color can supply us with life and wellness. And now, as Eve's shaky hands grasped the card, I fought the urge to snatch it from her. This card was precious to me. I couldn't risk her ruining it. It's colorful. She gasped in awe, her eyes absorbing the card as though its sparkles were emitting from it. I can see the rainbow. He hasn't stolen it from me. Suddenly, Eve's guard was up once again, and she clenched the card against her chest. I winced as the paper grew crinkled in her strong grasp. I need to keep this card with me. I can't let the Shadow Man steal it. It's all I have left. Protectively, I shook my head. My deranged patient could not be trusted with my precious card, my personal gift from my daughter. No, I don't think that's... Debbie, please, Eve urged. For one moment, the desperation in her voice made her sound sane. This is life or death. I am not insane. He is going to kill me. I can't let him steal the color from this. It's all I have. Please. Hesitance gripped me by the throat, and I opened my mouth to speak. Nothing came out. Eve stared me down, and her empty eyes were suddenly not empty anymore. They weren't lifeless. Instead, they seemed brighter, filled with life, with hope. I had never seen this side of Evelyn Barrett before. I stuttered. Nothing is going to happen to you, Eve. You don't need this card. But as I said these words, even I heard the doubt within my voice. I felt that I would regret keeping the card. Perhaps if I gave Eve the card to borrow, she would feel more at ease. Perhaps this card was the key to break through into Eve's mind. Perhaps she wasn't so far gone. Reluctantly, I backed away from the girl. Just keep it for now. That's fine, I sighed. Eve's eyes sparkled, and a hint of a smile pricked at her lips. She looked normal, as though she didn't live in a sanitarium. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, she repeated hastily. Just return it to me when you no longer need it. Of course. Eve's mannerism was completely different than it had been when she first arrived. As she continued inspecting the card in awe, I couldn't help but smile. Perhaps I could help her. Perhaps the Eve that I was not quite fond of was fading, and a new girl was coming to light. Either way, I felt the start of something new. Hope. The next day, I was scheduled to check up on Eve. The feeling of apprehension that usually sat in the pit of my stomach was gone. Ever since our session yesterday, I had faith that my patient was healing, truly healing. I walked with optimism, hopeful that my relationship with Eve was growing stronger. One of the best feelings as a therapist was knowing that you were of aid to your patient, that you were able to dig them out of a great hole. It felt rewarding, fulfilling. I approached Eve's door and knocked gently so as not to startle her. Though she was in the process of healing, she was still fragile. I waited for a few seconds before knocking again. Eve did not respond, and I heard no noise from inside the room. The queasy feeling in my stomach returned. I knocked louder. No response. To accompany my uneasiness, an alarm resonated through my skull. Something was wrong. Skeptically, I pushed open the door and took a quick glance around the room. It didn't take long for me to spot her. Eve. She was sprawled out on the ground, unconscious. Without hesitation, I crouched on the floor next to her, shaking her shoulder. "Eve? Eve?" I blurted. There was no response. She didn't move. "No, Eve. Wake up." My chest felt light as I reached for Eve's delicate wrist. There was no pulse. In fact, her skin was a block of ice. "Oh my God, Eve." Numbly, my eyes trailed over towards her hand. Her fingers limply held a little slip of paper with a rainbow on it. The card that my daughter made. The next few moments were a blur. My body began moving on its own, while my mind remained stuck on the image of Eve's body on the floor. Her still, pale body. As I unconsciously grabbed the card out of Eve's limp hand and shoved it in my pocket, I heard muffled voices entering the bedroom, scrambling around me, asking me what had happened. I didn't process the question, couldn't process it. All of my senses were honed in on Eve, on the fact that she was dead. Nurses surrounded Eve and I, and before I knew it, I was laying on the ground too. losing consciousness. I felt as though I was floating in outer space, and it became a struggle to breathe. My vision was fading into a deep darkness, and everyone near me was fading. The nurses, Eve, everything was fading. I was grasping onto nothing. But no, something was still there, hidden in the corner of my periphery. Though it blended within the darkness overtaking my mind, it wasn't completely hidden. I saw it. Him, though hardly visible, I was still able to make out the silhouette of a large man standing in the corner of the room. He hardly looked like a man at all, really. As far as I could tell, he had no hair, no face. He looked like an apparition by the way he blended into the wall behind him. He was the absence of everything, a void where light should have been. It was impossible to make out the distinct features of the man. But even with a blurry glimpse, I knew that the man was something of a sinister entity. Evil. As I blacked out, two words repeatedly rang in my head. They reverberated deeply, their consonants sounding of menacing death knells. It was all I heard as I lost consciousness. Shadow man, shadow man, shadow man. I woke up with a start on the couch in my office. My thoughts immediately trailed to what I last could remember. They trailed to Eve. She had died. Was that all a dream? What if it wasn't? What was the cause of her death? She was healthy, physically at least. Nothing made sense. The shadowed silhouette grazed my thoughts, and a chill fell over my body. I must have been imagining the man. I had not been in the right state of mind, nearly on the brink of passing out. It was an illusion. It had to be. So why was it that Eve had also been hallucinating a shadow man? A lump in my pocket alerted my senses, and I reached for whatever was inside. My fingers lifted out a piece of crinkled paper, scrunched up in a ball. The card. It was ruined, shoved in my pocket like a piece of trash. As my eyes welled up with tears, I unfolded the paper and examined the rainbow on the front. I blinked multiple times and wiped away the tears from my eyes. Something wasn't right. My vision was playing games with me. As I stared at the card, at the sloppy rainbow on the front, my heart dropped as I realized something. Eve wasn't crazy. The rainbow on the front of the card was no longer drawn in colorful crayon. It was purely black and white, colorless heart. Set your story in a world that has lost all color. Colorless Heart by Lucy Apatow. Marie roused from sleep in the double bed inside the Paris Hilton Hotel. She sank into the comfort of the silky sheets and the fresh fabric smell. A smile splashed across her face, unable to open her eyes just yet. Freedom at last. Just her. no one else. No jumping on eggshells, not being caught off guard. No secrets, no lies. Just Marie. No other soul in this room. Away from him. But it wasn't only about liberation. It was about protection. Keeping her loved ones safe. She had to keep them alive. And this was the only way. Freedom for herself, but separation from her loved ones. But that one person foremost in her brain. Salvatore. Marie had recently attended a gun range and learned how to fire a gun, just in case. She never knew when she might need to use it. It was about protection. The alarm on her mobile phone jerked her fully awake. A yawn filtered through as she slowly opened her eyes and spotted her phone on the dull black bedside table that had been brown yesterday. The white cushions that had been hues of purple. The black curtains that had been taupe. The ash-black carpet beneath the bed that had been gray. And the black sky through a gap in the window curtain that had been blue. No more blue skies. No more shades other than black and white. The world had lost its color. Marie's breath quickened as her heart palpitated. She rose from bed and rubbed her eyes hard. It had to be her eyes. Had she suddenly become colorblind? Where were all the bright, vibrant colors when it was what she needed? She shut, then opened her eyes, but nothing changed. Her world was drab, colorless, soulless. Her shoulders slumped over, her head bowed. A slow chill ran up and down her spine. Curiosity peaked. Her skin reddened and turned hot. She had no choice but to be here in this colorless world. What had happened overnight to turn her entire world into a shroud of darkness with only black and white in its midst? Marie wandered outside the hotel, lost in a world where she knew no one. She had left Melbourne to make a fresh start in Paris, so nobody would find her. So he couldn't find her. She couldn't believe having woken up in a house with shades of gray and black blocking her view of natural color, light, and even shades of gray. A bench with a view of the River Seine looked inviting as she made her way over, put her bag down, and stared at the calm ripples with a view of the majestic Eiffel Tower. Sailing boats anchored in the water, bunched up trees, and riders swinging their arms inside canoes. The wind scraped her face in the winter. Nothing but black and white. Marie flashed back to her former life. Back home where she worked as an interior designer, married to a man she didn't love, and friends who would most likely understand her escape. Yesterday, her world was dark, but today, after she awoke, it became darker, grittier, and scarier. Did this lack of color mean something? could she no longer design with color to refresh old homes or design new ones if she wanted to start over in France? She had not rung anyone except her best friend Helena about her sudden escape for their own protection. With a call from a burner phone, she announced her safe arrival. "Do you have color? Or has the world changed?" Helena replied. "What are you talking about? The things in the world. They're in black and white, Helena. I woke up this morning and nothing was in color. No blues, browns, pinks, purple, yellows, or any color. All gone. Is Melbourne the same? Don't be silly, Marie. We still have color. Have you become colorblind? Had your eyes checked? You couldn't have become colorblind in an instant. Go get them tested. Oh, and please stay safe. I don't know when I'll call you next. You know how he is. He could be tracking this conversation, even if it's on a burner phone. I love you, Marie. And I'm glad you're safe now. One day, we'll be together again." Marie fought back tears after ending the call. She would miss her loved ones, but she still didn't get what was going on. Was she the crazy one? Or did only Paris lose its color? With a sigh, Marie rose and made her way back to the hotel, knowing she'd have to find herself permanent residence. As she crossed the wide road, a towering man brushed her shoulder. "Oh, sorry." He locked eyes with her and walked ahead of her on the other side of the road. His broad shoulders and black eyes made her shudder, stopping in his tracks. "I have a message to give you." She angled her head. "Who are you?" "Here, take this," he said. She retrieved the note. He watched her. Who the hell was this guy? And why was he making her nervous? "Who are you?" "I'm just the messenger, lady. Read the note." "Who sent you?" He inched his way closer. Benny did. "Now read the note." "No. Not again." He found her. Would this bastard ever leave her alone? With a shuddering breath, she unfolded the note, her hands shaking and the back of her neck sweating. Bits of her skin prickled. What was this? She had to be dreaming as she read the note. Her vision blurred, as if the words weren't real. The threat wasn't real. "Meet me in front of the Louvre tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp, or someone you love dies." The same old threats again. How did he find me? The man bared his crooked teeth with a smile. He swaggered off into the distance. It wasn't over. It never would be. The next morning, Marie paced her steps towards the Louvre, a queue that was a mile long. She wondered if anyone would ever reach the entrance to the museum. The glass panels of the building distracted her from the enemy she was about to meet. Each step drew her closer to the devil. When would it end? Her breath hitched as she stepped on uneven ground, razor-sharp pain cutting into her lower back as she fought the gust of frozen wind. She had to free herself, But how? He would always find her, threaten her, obsess over her, and abuse her. She'd been abused for 3 torturous years. Storm clouds brewed when Marie drew closer to the swarms of people. It was almost 9 o'clock, and passers-by stared at her as if she as an alien. Was it obvious she was heading towards her death chamber, to her dreaded foe? A cold caress at the back of her neck made her freeze in her spot. She turned. It was him. Benny. In all his wealthy glamour, the bastard wore a black tie, black buttoned-up suit jacket over a black cashmere jumper with black pleated pants over Italian leather shoes. He smelled rich. "Follow me," he said, as he prodded her towards an unknown destination. They walked in silence as his intermittent glares unnerved her. The squeeze of his arm draped through hers, leaving bruises, but she said nothing. His pinch at the back of her neck made her flinch, but she said nothing. The push and pull of her hair strands made her want to cry out, but she didn't. Hidden pain to display her fake strength. When finally, she sat down outside the cafe with its outdoor setting, he ordered hot drinks and croissants. "No one does what you did, and gets away with it," she swallowed, her lip trembling as she stared past him. "Please don't hurt him," he chuckled and threw his head back, his stained white teeth prominent. Flicking a cigarette over an ashtray, he tilted his head. "You're lucky I love you, Marie. If I didn't love you, you'd be dead by now. But you ever try something like this again, and I won't hesitate to slash your throat, feed your decrepit body to the fish in the Seine River. Got that?" She nodded, a black spot clouding her vision. Puffs of smoke floated towards her and made her cough. Not that he cared. He was a narcissist. He retrieved his phone. "Watch this. No, I mean business, Marie. I don't blow damn smoke up my arse." She gripped the phone and saw him, tied up to a chair, gagged, beaten, tortured. 2 black eyes, bruising across his cheek, haggard, frail, head hanging down low, as if giving up. "No, don't give up, my love. Never give up." A gasp of air grounded her. Rattling teeth must have made her look scared in front of him. "Is he all right?" he scoffed. "That depends on you. You put 1 foot wrong. Leave me again, and he dies. Only when we're safely back home, he'll be released." The waiter returned with the croissants and hot coffees. "Sorry about the croissants. They're a little overcooked, but these are more their natural yellow." Marie winced. "But those croissants are black, not yellow." He waved a hand. "Don't mind her. She's the constant joker. But no worries. We'll have them as they are, the waiter nodded. Black, you say? Benny glared. Leave us. The waiter walked off with a curious gaze. He turned to her. What is wrong with you? Can't you see the color of the food? How could he not see what she was seeing? What was wrong with her? No, everything is black and white. I don't see color anymore. He laughed. Are you telling me you don't? You see the brown coffees, the blue ashtray, the beige tablecloth, my red tie, my dashing blue eyes. Her heart missed a beat as she gritted her teeth. No, I lost sight of color this morning. I woke up like this. Everything is black and white. Interesting, he said. Marie looked past him and spotted the man she'd seen earlier. The one who had given her the note. He was standing by a lamppost, sculling a bottle of beer. Why was he around? He must have been Benny's bodyguard, in case she made a run for it. Marie and Benny stepped inside her hotel room. He pushed her towards the wardrobe. Start packing. Our flight leaves in a few hours. Okay then. She pushed aside her floating tears and steeled herself by pulling out her suitcase from underneath the bed, unzipping it. As if in a surreal world, she pulled clothing off hangers and threw them into the suitcase. She was going back to her prison, away from the love of her life. If only she had been stronger a few years ago, when he had framed her ex-boyfriend, Salvatore, for murder, just so he could be free from prison. She was forced to marry him. Marriage to Benny in exchange for Salvatore's freedom. She had never explained why she'd broken up with him. Had to convince Salvatore she no longer loved him. It had cut her insides, but she had to keep him safe. Salvatore had not given up on her and found ways for them to meet secretly. But Benny always found out about their secret rendezvous. He had put plans in place, made the worst things happen. Benny involved in Salvatore crashing his car, ruining his reputation in business, injuring his friend with a beating by his henchmen, and almost killing him at least twice. Now Salvatore was threatened with death. What more could the creep do? I'm having a shower, he said. She sat on the bed. How could she go back with him? But she had no choice when Salvatore would die if she didn't. Benny's phone lay on the bedside table. Curious, she picked it up and found his recording. Salvatore was still tied to the chair, still tortured and broken. But wait, something was weird about this video. The actions were the same. His movements repeated in a cycle, as if it was on a loop. This wasn't her true love life. This was a fake video. It had to be. Could Salvatore have arranged this? Outsmarted Benny again? She smiled to herself. Now she had a chance to do something. Fight him. Hurt him. But no, she wasn't a violent person and had morals. Nothing like Benny. What could she do? Run away again? But Benny might pursue Salvatore and never stop. He would never stop finding her until his own death. She knew that. So what could she do? She could never reason with a crazy person. A knock on the door made her jolt in her spot. It could be anyone. Her heart racing, she slowly opened the door and flinched when the man from earlier pushed past her. "Where's Benny? What are you doing here?" the man whispered in her ear. "Listen, Salvatore will set you free. Get out of here," she swallowed, her vision blurring. "What?" The back of her neck sweated as one ear listened in on Benny in the shower. "No time to talk. Leave. Now. We'll take care of this." She was right. It was a fake recording. He'd escaped. Where is he? The man swung the gun in his hand, scanning past her. "He's closer than you think. Go now." Her heart soared, and a spot of color flashed in her vision. But only fleetingly. It turned black and white again. What in hell is going on here? Benny grasped something from his back pocket. "Why are you here?" The man shrugged until reaching his side pocket and shooting towards Benny, who shifted to the side, the bullet grazing his cheek. But Benny pulled out his own gun and took aim. The gun hit the man square in the chest. He fell back against the door with a thud. Marie quaked. It was over. No love, no freedom. "You will never leave me." "Never, Marie. Get that. Nobody will ever take you away from me. Grab your things. Hurry up." He shifted the strange man's body to the bathroom, blood pouring out of him like a tap. When he returned, Benny shoved her aside and flung the remainder of her clothes into the suitcase. "Now zip it up and let's leave pronto." He sat on the sofa and scrolled through his phone. A call to one of his stupid thugs. Goosebumps swarmed like insects over her arms as a dull ache at the back of her neck made her queasy. This had to stop. Slowly zipping up the baggage. A shuffling sound underneath the bed made her think she was hearing things. But no. She spotted a shoe protruding from the corner as someone glided further to the edge near the bedside table. Salvatore appeared and placed a finger across his lips, hefting a gun. She moved towards Benny, pulled the suitcase off the bed, and retrieved her bag. "I'm ready." Salvatore flung himself in the open and approached Benny with an aim of his gun. "Put your hands up. Now." Benny flinched. "You have a death wish, don't you? You might have got away from my men, but you'll never win this war. I will fight you to the death, Benny. I don't care if I die, so long as Marie goes free. Free from your dungeon. Free from your psychopathic world. You loser." He faced Marie. "Go now. I'll take care of this." She shook her head. "We fight with our hands. Fight to the death." Benny scoffed. "Fine with me." He shoved his pistol inside his back pocket and took a fighting stance while Salvatore did the same. "No, please, Salvatore. Just go. I can't be with you. Benny's my husband. I'm going back to Melbourne with him. Please leave." "No, Marie, enough is enough." Benny threw the first punch, then another and another, until he went down. He gouged one of Salvatore's eyes and flung his head hard against the carpet. Marie moved. "No, Benny, stop. I'll come with you. Please stop." Benny softened, giving Salvatore the chance to pound into Benny with a blow to the kidney, and then a swift kick in the leg. Lamps overturned, magazines tumbled in the air, and the coffee table shifted. Benny kicked him on the side of his abdomen, and he keeled over. She had to do something. But what? Benny reached for something in his pants pocket. A flick knife. No. He was going to break the rules. Not on her watch. Salvatore attempted to rise when Benny stepped forward. A smirk plastered over his face. He wandered over to him when the knife swung in the air. Marie reached for his back pocket, pulled out the gun, and aimed. "Stop, or I'll shoot," he scoffed. "You don't have the guts. Don't even know guns." Benny ignored her, about to stab Salvatore in the throat. Marie pulled the trigger and shot him twice in the stomach. The knife fell, and he dropped like a sack of potatoes. Blood seeped onto the carpet, and she watched and waited for the life force to draw out of him. 3 years of hell. 3 years of watching over her shoulder. 3 years of fearing the lives of her loved ones, walking quietly on eggshells. Those days were over as the rotten apple drew his last breath. Salvatore shuffled towards her and hugged her. "I love you, Marie. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from him. You've always protected me." She beamed. "I love you too, Salvatore." She savored the gentle caress of her lover's strong arms around her waist. Her eyes shifted, her surroundings vibrating with color. Nor more colorless world. The chromatic drought. Detective Marcus Sine squinted at the fading landscape through his office window. Another day, another shade of gray, lost to whatever this phenomenon was. The sky no longer held its azure expanse, just a flat, pale ceiling hanging lifelessly above a world growing increasingly two-dimensional. 3 more reports of rivers running dry in the Eastern District, Officer Palmer said, dropping a thin file onto Sane's desk. And the hospitals reporting 17 new cases of what they're calling chromatic dehydration. Sine nodded grimly. The medical examiner had shown him the bodies last week. Skin paper thin, organs collapsed inward, as if someone had extracted not just the water, but the very substance from them. Their eyes, once spherical, had flattened to perfect circles, staring out from faces that resembled pencil sketches more than human remains. "Any pattern to where it's spreading?" Sine asked, though he already knew the answer. None that makes sense, Palmer replied. It's jumping between neighborhoods, between people who've never met. The only consistent thing is that once it starts in an area, everything there loses dimension within 72 hours. Sign turned away from the window. His own hands seemed less substantial today, the knuckles less pronounced, the veins no longer raised beneath his skin. He'd taken to pressing his palms against solid objects throughout the day, reassuring himself that he could still feel texture, still interact with a three-dimensional world. What about the library research? He asked. Palmer's expression darkened. Archives are becoming affected. Books are losing their ink, words disappearing from pages even as people try to read them. This was worse than Sane had feared. Knowledge itself was being drained from the world. The river had been the first to go in Westbrook. Once a vibrant, blue-green artery cutting through the heart of the city, it had faded to a pale, silvery streak before disappearing entirely, leaving only a shallow depression in the ground where water had flowed for centuries. Sign stood in the dry riverbed, feeling the cracked earth beneath his shoes. It didn't feel like drought. There was no sense of moisture having evaporated. Rather, it was as if the concept of river had been partially erased from reality, leaving behind this ghostly impression. Detective Sign, a woman approached him, her white lab coat nearly indistinguishable from the colorless landscape. Dr. Eliza Tanner, the city's leading physicist, had been studying the phenomenon since its first appearance 3 months ago. The process is accelerating, she said without preamble. We've been measuring the dimensional collapse, and what took weeks in the beginning is now happening in days. How long? Sign asked. Until complete two-dimensionality? For the entire planet? She shrugged, the gesture oddly truncated, as if her shoulders couldn't quite complete their full range of motion. At the current rate, 2 weeks, maybe less. Sign swallowed. And then what? I don't know, Dr. Tanner admitted. But I found something you should see. The university's rare book collection had been moved to a secure facility once the libraries began to empty. Dr. Tanner led Sign through rows of glass cases containing ancient texts, their pages increasingly blank as the phenomenon progressed. Most of our oldest manuscripts are already gone, she explained. But this one is different. She stopped before a small display containing what appeared to be a journal bound in matte black leather. Unlike the other books, whose pages had turned a uniform white, this one's text remained stubbornly visible, though the letters seemed to shift and rearrange themselves whenever Sane tried to focus on them. It's resisting the effect, Dr. Tanner said. And more importantly, it appeared in our collection the day the river began to fade. No record of acquisition, no catalog entry. It was simply there. Sign leaned closer. Can you translate it? Portions. It appears to be a record kept by something called the Society of Final Memory. From what I can decipher, they were an ancient order dedicated to preserving knowledge through catastrophic events. Preserving knowledge? But everything's being erased. Dr. Tanner's fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted her glasses. A gesture Sign noticed seemed less three-dimensional than it should have been. "I think they made a mistake," she whispered. "A terrible one." The journal led them to the underground chambers beneath the old cathedral. Sign had never known these catacombs existed, though they appeared to have been built centuries before the church itself. The society maintained outposts throughout the world, Dr. Tanner explained, as they descended the narrow stairs, flashlight beams cutting through dust that hung motionless in the air. According to the journal, they believed humanity was cyclical, civilizations rising and falling in patterns, with crucial knowledge lost in each collapse. So they preserved information across these cycles? Sign asked, ducking beneath a low archway. The stone felt wrong beneath his fingers, too smooth, as if the grain and texture were being slowly erased. Yes, but more than that, they developed a method to intentionally reset civilization if they deemed it necessary, a way to erase dangerous knowledge while preserving what they considered essential wisdom. The stairway opened into a vast circular chamber. At its center stood a pedestal holding what appeared to be an obsidian sphere, the only object Soin had seen in weeks that still possessed a sense of depth and dimension. Surrounding it, slumped against the walls and floor, were desiccated bodies, or rather, what remained of them. They resembled paper cutouts more than corpses, flattened and colorless. The last active members of the society, Dr. Tanner murmured. They activated the device, the mnemonic purge, they called it. But something went wrong. Sign approached the sphere cautiously. Unlike everything else in this fading world, it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. A perfect three-dimensional void amid the increasingly two-dimensional reality. The journal says the purge was meant to be selective, Dr. Tanner continued, her voice growing thinner, less substantial. To remove specific knowledge while leaving the fundamental structure of reality intact. But they miscalculated. Instead of erasing dangerous information, they started erasing the fundamental properties of existence: dimension, color, substance. And now it's spreading like a contagion throughout reality. Sign reached toward the sphere, feeling a strange pull. Can it be reversed? The journal wasn't clear, but Dr. Tanner's words cut off abruptly. Sign turned to find her frozen in place, her form suddenly flat against the wall, like a photograph. Her mouth was open in mid-sentence, but no sound emerged. Before his eyes, her image seemed to lose resolution, details blurring until she resembled a rough sketch more than a person. "Dr. Tanner!" He reached for her, but his hand passed through where her shoulder should have been. She wasn't just flat. she was becoming insubstantial, Sign turned back to the sphere in horror. The loss of dimensionality was accelerating. He could feel it in his own body, his lungs laboring to expand in 3 dimensions when reality only permitted 2. His vision narrowing as his eyeballs flattened into circles. The journal had described the purge as a reset, a way to begin civilization anew. But this wasn't renewal. This was erasure, with the last of his dimensional strength. Sane grasped the obsidian sphere. It burned cold against his palms, the sensation almost nostalgic, a reminder of when touch had depth and texture. If the society had started this, perhaps their tool could end it. The sphere pulsed beneath his touch, and Sane had the distinct sensation of something ancient and aware turning its attention toward him. Not a machine, but an entity, a consciousness that had been waiting, perhaps for centuries, for someone to recognize the terrible mistake. "You understand," a voice whispered directly into his mind. The cycle was corrupted, the purge incomplete. "How do I stop it?" Sane gasped, feeling his vocal cords flattening, his words becoming as thin as paper. The purge cannot be stopped, but it can be completed correctly. The sphere began to glow with an impossible light. Not white, or any color Sign could name, but something that suggested all colors at once, dimensions beyond the 3 he knew. "Choose what remains," the voice commanded. "What essence of your world must survive to build anew?" Sign understood then. The society hadn't intended to destroy reality, but to curate it, to select which elements would survive the transition to the next cycle. Their failure had been one of judgment, not mechanism. As his consciousness expanded into the sphere, Sayin saw the entirety of his fading world. Every person, place, and memory collapsing into flatness. And beyond that, he glimpsed other worlds, other cycles, stretching back through countless iterations of humanity. With his final 3-dimensional thought, Sane made his choice. "Hey, Jimmy, you still reading that comic?" Mrs. Abernathy called from behind the drugstore counter. "Those new Detective Sane stories are all black and white, now that the war's on. Not much to look at." 12-year-old Jimmy Marshall didn't look up from the final panels of Detective Sane and the Mystery of the Vanishing World. He traced his finger over the stark black and white illustrations, the flattened city, the mysterious sphere, the hero's final choice. "I don't mind, Mrs. Abernathy," he replied. "The story's better than the colors, anyway." He turned to the last page, where Detective Sign stood before a newly dimensional world, color bleeding back into the edges of the panel as rivers began to flow again and people regained their solid forms. The final caption read, "And so Sign chose to preserve not knowledge or power, but the capacity for dimension itself, the ability to grow, to change, to become more than flat impressions on a finite page. Jimmy closed the comic carefully. Outside the shop window, a military convoy rumbled past, headed for the docks, and then across the Atlantic. The world was at war, resources were scarce, and luxuries like colored ink for comics were among the first casualties on the home front. But as he stepped outside into the April sunshine, Jimmy couldn't help seeing the world a little differently, noticing the subtle depths and dimensions that existed even in the harshest of times, the colors that persisted even when they couldn't be printed on a page. He tucked the comic securely under his arm and headed home, unaware that in his hands he carried one of the last remaining artifacts of a civilization that had faded not once, but countless times before, each cycle preserved paradoxically within the flat, two-dimensional pages of a story that refused to be forgotten.